Well, welcome back to Insights into Success, where we're doing a special episode called Ready to Succeed with our guest, Walter Crosby, who was on a recent show. His business is called Helix Sales Development. And as the name of the business suggests, he's very passionate about sales. He also has the podcast Sales and Cigars, where another passion being cigars. But talking to Walter, I understand that you do engage in reading. So I want to hand it over to you and find out a bit about you in terms of maybe a couple of books that you've read that have inspired you and find out a little bit more about your reading style. So take over, Walter, and tell us a little bit about some books.
It's always an interesting topic. I think books give you a little insight into the individual as to what they read and how they think. So I have a weird one maybe for some people. It's called Meditations. It's a compilation of Marcus Aurelius's private writings that he didn't intend for people to read 2,000 years later. It's a book that I read at least once a year. It's something you have to study, but it's really about stoicism and that being a philosophy of how to live your life. And it's not very complicated, but it is. And I look at it this way. It's helped me think about when I get upset about something or I get emotional about something, when it's not positive, right? You get anxiety or you get angry about something. Why am I doing that? And it sort of stops. It stops me to think, and it takes discipline. You got to get there, and that's why I keep rereading the book. But it's something that, like, is this going to matter in a year, 10 years, 20 years?
Yeah.
And can I control it, most importantly? Right? And if I can't control something, then why am I investing a lot of emotion into the issue? So it's not a big book, but it's a big book. And I like to it's always sitting on the table when I get up to go read, and I try to read every morning. Not for 2 hours, try to get in 15, 20 minutes of something that's of interest to me. So there's usually a couple of books on the little table in my reading area. And that's one that's always there. And then I have another book. I rarely read fiction. It's just not something that entertains me. I read to learn. I read to improve. So another book it's one that I often gift, is called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it talks about the entrepreneur and divides them up into different types of entrepreneurs, about why they start a business and why they struggle and what they struggle with. And I think it's something, if somebody's thinking about starting a business or has recently started a business, it's a great book to go review and read and think about, which one am I? And what do I have to look forward to? But I do enjoy reading.
I was just going to say, it's a very widely quoted book. A lot of people recommend people read that book.
Well, I've had the opportunity to hear Michael speak a couple of times, and he's got a great practice. He does really great work, but it's one of those things that you can kind of go back to and reread and like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's a good reminder. There's always something though that somebody recommends a book. I have friends who, like, if they say read this, like, I don't ask a lot of questions. I just read it. And then I go back to them like, what were you thinking? Or like, that was awesome. Right. I like to read books that make me think and ones that draw me in. So but I also prefer to read the book and hold it, touch it. But I do find myself listening to Audible with certain types of books.
Right. Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions: is what's your preference and style of reading? So in terms of your cover books, what do you do in terms of retention of information? Like, do you make notes? Do you use a highlighter? Do you do anything? I mean, what do you do, and how good are you at retaining information?
So I have little, this is a bigger post-it, but I have little post-its that are strips.
Yeah.
Um, so I have different colors. I use them for different reasons. So I write in a book. I write in the margins. I circle things, but I put the little post-its inside it to pull me to be able to come back to it. Because I think that books that have some, we resonate with it, that we should go back to it and look at it and then think about what why I circled that, right? And
Yeah.
it forces me to go back and think about the why, right? I got my notes in there, but then I reread a passage and maybe it hits me differently the next time I read it than it did
Sure.
the first time, right? Maybe I'm more open to something, or maybe something else is happening.
Yeah.
So there's a few books that are sitting there. The library and Audible is much bigger than what I can get through. That I listen to when I'm like, if I'm out walking,
Yeah.
for exercise, or driving. Um, I
Yeah.
can consume a
Just want
book
to
that way.
go back to the book that you were talking about before, about Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism. I haven't read that particular book, but now I will. But I've read a couple of books by Ryan Holiday, who's big on Stoicism. So yeah, I definitely recommend people read it and get to understand a bit more about the philosophy, because it's very practical, and it resonates for me personally. So yeah, no, interested to hear you talking about it.
Well, Ryan makes it approachable. Um,
Absolutely.
he makes it more, because when you read meditations, it's a translation, from mostly Greek, and some, I forget what the other language was that he wrote in, but he went back and forth between languages. So
Right.
some of the words, like, it's a little convoluted, but Ryan has studied it so much, he makes it much more approachable for those of us to consume it. And
Yeah.
he's written some great books. Ryan has a daily Stoic, an email that shows up in your
Mm,
inbox every day. That is free. You got to listen to his political views from time to time, but he gives you a lesson every time, um,
yeah.
with Stoicism.
Yeah. And so with your reading, so I gather from what you said before, you typically like to read at least once a day for at least sort of 10-20 minutes.
Yeah, in the morning, um,
Yeah.
5:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm up. Um, cup coffee. Um, kind of think about what it is I need to do for the day. The day's usually
Yeah.
planned out the night before, and then just sit there with the quiet. Like, I get up earlier than um, anybody else, and I just love that quiet time in the morning.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it and then I get to read a little bit, and sometimes it's a half hour, sometimes it's 10 minutes. It just depends upon what I'm consuming.
Sure.
And but I don't do it at night. I know some people like to read at night. I don't retain it as well.
Right.
And if I try to sit down and consume a whole book in a weekend, I don't retain that either. So I really need to kind of come in and out. We pick up where I left off with my note. I usually leave myself a note, and then go. So
And do you read like more than one book at a time? And if so, how do you find that for retention?
um, there's usually more than one book that's started, and I might pause a book because somebody said you got to read this.
Right.
But then when I go back, I got to do a little bit more review. That's why the post-it notes and the notes in the book itself help you catch up, right? To review more quickly, to go pick up, and then because you can't just go drop in and move forward, right? I'll leave myself a note like what he was saying here was, and then that brings me back up to speed, and then I can consume the next few pages. But the other part of that process is to read and then stop and go think about what I read. If I don't do that, the retention is much less. And I'm not thinking about it with the book in front of me. I'm just thinking about what it was, that key point that was part of the pages that I read that day. And that's
Right.
kind of a weird thing. I don't know somebody else that does that. Because sometimes they just stop in with the book and they're thinking about it and they can go back and reference the book. I want to reference the book in my head and try to make sure that I pull it because it's there. I just got to get the synapses to fire in the right order to go get it again.
Yeah.
And I do that, right? So here's the bad habit. The second cup of coffee usually involves a cigar, right? Where I come out here to my office and, there's a notebook and I'm thinking about what it is and how does that apply to the thing that I'm doing. Doesn't always, but it does. It's part of the process.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a good way to retain it and apply it. So good strategy. All right, Walter. Well, thank you so much again. Appreciate you staying on for this extra segment and sharing with us a couple of books. So thank you very much for your time and look forward to staying in touch.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.